address some logistical issues for the session and then introduce our speaker for today, Forrest Breyfogle. A lot of material Forrest has planned for us in this 1-hour webinar, so the audio will be muted for the remainder of the presentation to ensure that we are able to get through the entire presentation in the time allowed. We will not be able to hear you, but of course you'll be able to hear Forrest. But please do not let this stop you from sending us text questions through the system during the presentation. We value your questions, and if Forrest will not be able to get to your questions at the end of the webinar, then we will either email you or call you, follow up with a response. We will save all questions to the end. There will also be a recording of this webinar available on our website within 24 to 48 hours. You will receive an email tomorrow with a link to the recording. Please know that as a participant in this webinar, someone with Smarter Solutions will be giving you a call or reaching out to you via email. And if you do not want us to contact you, please let us know in the feedback survey at the end of the webinar. I will now introduce our presenter, Forrest Breyfogle. Forrest is a professional engineer and an ASQ fellow. He has authored or co-authored 14 books and published over 150 technical articles. He recently completed the BPM guidebook and a 5-book set, Integrated Enterprise Excellence, which provides radical management advances in the utilization and integration of scorecards, strategic planning, and process improvement. Forrest was named the Quality Professional of the Year for 2011 by Quality Magazine, and he also received the prestigious Crosby Medal from the American Society for Quality in 2004 for implementing Six Sigma, the 2nd edition. Just celebrated 10-year anniversary of that award. And Forrest is currently located in Austin, Texas, here today with us, where he has founded Smarter Solutions back in 1992. Forrest, good to have you here today.
Thank you, Alon. Well, the title of the webinar is Transforming Your Historical Metrics to a Futuristic State. However, we're going to cover a lot more information than the title implies. Well, I'm going to jump right on in here. Some observations. When times get tough, who is one of the first people to get laid off? Process improvement practitioner. Why is this? Because whenever times get tough, it would seem like we need process improvement the most. Perhaps the practitioner is not answering or doing things that executives think are important. Another question, why is it that scorecards often indicate that improvement has been made, but only to find that things get worse again? Perhaps when we changed from red to green in a red, yellow, green scorecard, we didn't really make an improvement. It's normal noise of the process. Our dashboards are leading us down the wrong path. Should we do things smarter relative to the overall business? What is really needed? What are the major business management issues of leadership? I've been dwelling on that final question, and I came up with my 4 thoughts. The first thought is executive management might receive a monthly 60-plus side PowerPoint deck or a huge Excel file which nets out their metrics for the month. However, this report really took a lot of time to put together and is dated information. It can also be difficult to interpret and does not really present information in an actionable format. Data is only history and does not represent what we might expect in the future. That's the first point. The second point is quarterly executive management reviews are lengthy and questionable in value. We often might talk about corrective and preventive action, but often this dialogue does not really align to our performance metrics. Just that might be an issue too. Now, the third thing is there can be much wasted resources fighting fires, and the benefits of process improvement are not really obvious. Issues of the day are supposed to be resolved when we fix them, but gee whiz, they crop up again, i.e. firefighting. We might have saved $100 million, at least we report it that way, but people have a hard time finding the money from these process improvement projects. The fourth and final is often we have organizations operating in silo where little regard is to the big picture. What's right for one silo relative to metrics and objectives is often not is in conflict with another silo, and often the sight of the big picture is lost. What I'm going to be describing is a methodology that addresses all four issues. Learning objectives for this session is describe conversion of commonplace dashboard and key performance indicator reporting to a predictive statement. Describe how 30,000-foot level predictive metrics can be reported out throughout an organization so we know and estimate what's happening in the future, but also we can see how everything's put together. Also describe how we can focus improvement efforts to those 30,000-foot level metrics that benefit the enterprise as a whole. Up for a polling question. What type dashboards does your current or past organization use? Choose more than one type if appropriate. We've got red, yellow, green scorecards, table and numbers, time series reporting, predictive process performance reporting, no performance metric tracking, or I don't know.
Okay, and looks like a lot of people, over half of the audience has voted, so I'll give a couple more seconds and close it. All right, and I'll share those results with you guys for us. And, you know, I still cringe every time I hear of red and yellow, green scorecards. At a previous job, we implemented these in year 4 of my 5 years at the company. I really enjoyed my first few years there, but after a business venture went bad, everything changed. And I was telling you, Forrest, each month during that 4th year, we'd have to sit through a company-wide meeting to review things like the big, hairy, audacious goal, or the BHAG, a coined term back in 1994, and see if our monthly performance scored a red, yellow, or green compared to that big, hairy, audacious goal. So, you know, after that we started having the monthly meetings, the morale at the company was non-existent. By the end of my 4th year there, a lot of us either quit or got terminated, and we all deemed the company was a sinking ship, which it was. And I'm sure that the pressure and the humiliation of the reds or the yellows and the false hope if you were on green, like my 4-year-old says, made the ship sink faster. So I'm really glad you're discussing this today. And as everybody can see, you know, red, yellow, green scorecards are you know, 72% is what we're finding at other companies too.
Yes, I've seen that happen a lot of times. It does not lead to the right kind of behaviors, and that's what that's what I believe is so important with dashboard. It leads to the right kind of behaviors, and I'll be sharing with you a lot of case studies how these dashboards, including red, yellow, green scorecards, does not lead to the right behaviors. Okay, well, thank you. Okay, the learning objectives that we have listed here, the first one I'm going to be tackling on is the dashboards and KPI reporting and how to transfer those to predictive statements. So I've got 9 different case studies. The first one I'm going to be talking about is our favorite, red, yellow, green scorecard. Often red, yellow, green scorecards are presented as dials. They only compare instantaneous performance to a set goal. No insider trends or historical performance. And if a goal is not a specification, they're often ignored. Is this a good behavior? Is this a good way of presenting information or performance? I'm suggesting it's got some issues. Another type of red, yellow, green scorecard might be like an Excel spreadsheet where we look at the latest column, which represents the most recent time period. Yeah. We examine which colors are red. We determine if it is red, then we say, well, we need to get somebody working on it to bring it back to green. If it was red and now it's green, bring out the champagne. But guess what? We can change back to red again.
Exactly, Forrest.
So let's look at one of these metrics in particular, finance metric B. Now this is an actual red, yellow, green scorecard, so I did not fabricate it. The customer gave us permission to use it. Now if we observe this, we notice we got 33% red and 50% green. Now the question is, that special or common cause? Now many people will associate common and special cause terminology to Edwards-Deming with control charting. In control charting, we typically try to identify when special causes occur, stop the presses, and fix the problem in a manufacturing process. That's not what I'm talking about here. I'm talking about 30,000-foot level view. Not unlike an airplane, when we look out the window, we do not notice all the ups and downs of the terrain below us. We get a high-level view. That's what I'm talking about here. So it's a little bit different than traditional control charting. Now the term special and common cause, I'd like to dwell on that for those terminology a little bit more. And I use an illustration to describe my view of what special and common cause variability is. Let's consider the time it takes us to commute from home to work every day. Is it going to take us the same amount of time to the second? Well, obviously not. Why? Our speeds were different between days. We had more differences in delays because of traffic signals and so on. It might take us typically 25 to 35 minutes, so we consider that to be common cause variability. Now, if it took us an hour one day, we can talk about that one. Perhaps we had major traffic accident or we had inclement weather. But we have no right to talk about all the ups and downs in the 25 to 35 minutes or the common cause region. Now let's consider that we wanted to reduce the time it takes us to commute. We established a goal of 33 minutes. So if it's 34 minutes, we go in and try to figure out what was wrong because we didn't meet our goal. If it's 29 minutes, we'd say, fine, things are great. But I just said that's not what we should do. But that happens all the time in red, yellow, green scorecards. When the goals are set within common cause variability, we can be triggering between red and green just because it's common cause variability, and we didn't really improve anything. Now, if we've got common cause variability and we don't like the response or it's not satisfactory, we've got to go in and change our process. So let's consider it takes, or we decide to leave a half an hour earlier. Now we notice that it takes us between 18 to 22 minutes to commute. We fundamentally did something different to the process to change the response. And hopefully you got that as my major takeaway, is if we've got common cause variability, then we need to do something fundamentally different to the process if the response is not desirable. But traditional reporting does not view the response for KPIs and performance metrics as common cause versus special cause variability, and I'm suggesting that's a lacking of traditional reporting. Another thing that we can point out with red, yellow, green scorecards, it does not make a statement about the future. And the future is what we're really interested in. If we don't like what we see in the future, we need to do something fundamentally different. So I'm going to take this dashboard and elaborate a little bit more on it using 30,000-foot level reporting. Now with 30,000-foot level reporting, we use an individual's control chart, not an X bar and R chart, P chart, U chart, or C chart. Individual's chart. I said it was a little different than traditional control charting. Now when we look at this chart, we notice that we're not seeing any trends relative to the upper control limits, UCL, or lower control limit, LCL. Therefore, we make a statement that our process is stable and nothing has changed. Notice how that's quite different than the traditional red, yellow, green scorecard that we showed at the top. So we get false indicators from the red, yellow, green scorecard that we have. Now, if we've got a stable process like we do here, what can we say? We can say our process is predictable. The next obvious question is, what do you predict? Well, what we do is now is consider the data from the recent region of stability to be a random sample of the future. We'll then build a distribution of what we can expect in the future. We turn it sideways. The 2.2 value is a trigger for red. The area under the curve to the left represents the percentage of time, not only now but in the future, we expect it to be red. Calculating that area is somewhat difficult. A better way of calculating it is use the normal probability plot. Now, the normal probability plot might initially look intimidating, but it's quite simple. The x-axis is the same as the distribution shown at the top. The only difference is the y-axis, which represents percent less than. So if we go up and look at the value of 2.2, we'll notice that the value at the intercept of that line is 32.6. So we conclude basically we got about a 33% issue, not only now, but in the future. So what did we conclude by looking at our data differently? That nothing really changed, and we got about a 33% problem. Now, how might we present that so others can understand it? Well, I'm suggesting for continuous data, it's a two-chart process. We look at stability, and then we do a probability plot. Notice how this form of reporting is including what Deming said was so important, considering the variation of the process. What I'm suggesting is that we report out this information is by putting a statement at the bottom that describes how the process is performing. If it's a stable process, then we would be providing a prediction statement. Notice how the red, yellow, green scorecard actions that we might take from that particular report out is quite different than the 30,000-foot level charting shown below. The next dashboard I'm going to talk about is a table of numbers conversion. Now, just to reiterate, these are all actual dashboards from customers that we've had that gave me permission to use them. So I'm going to be talking about those and converting each one of those to 30,000-foot level reporting. And we'll see if we get very different actions depending upon how we report out these metrics. So this is a table of numbers that one organization was reporting out. The question is, what action or non-actions do we have after examining this dashboard? Kind of hard to say. I'm going to drill down on one of the areas of this dashboard, product A. I want to first examine what we're actually looking at as metric. If we examine closely, we'll notice much emphasis is given to comparing one week to the next. There is no mention of profitability as a key performance indicator metric. Don't you think it should? Sales and other costs are not addressed. The format of this executive dashboard does not encourage process improvement. Focus is given on new sales, but not existing customers. Now, what I'm going to focus on to compare to 30,000-foot level charting is total sales and sales by product type. If we look at total sales over some period of time, not just a snapshot of one particular month, what we would notice is that we've got a stable process. Like I illustrated before, we put a statement how the process is performing in the lower quadrant of the graph. So it makes it quite easy for even the novice to understand what's happening. Now, in this particular case, we don't have a specification. So what I suggest is that we report out the 10, 50, and 90 percentile values, and we make a statement. Our best estimate for the median values is the 50% value, the 80% frequency of occurrence, is the 90 minus 10 values. So in this particular response, using a 30,000 foot level chart, we would not do anything if this response is satisfactory. If it's not, then we need to do something fundamentally different. Now what I'm going to do now is drill down this all products metric to product A, and I'm going to call it a 20,000 foot level report out. Now for this particular metric, we notice that we've improved. That's a good thing, I would think. We also now have another region of stability. We can make a prediction statement. If this response is satisfactory, then we don't need to do anything. If this response is not, we need to do a process improvement project. Notice how we're not reacting to all the ups and downs in the regions of stability. Let's look now at product B. Again, it's stable. If this response is satisfactory, then we don't do anything. For product C, oh my goodness, it went down. If this response is unsatisfactory, we need to work on it. But maybe it's down because now there's a new product, and this is an older product that will eventually be phased out. So maybe it's okay the way it's responding. Product D, the sales went up. Got a new region of stability. Notice how this went up at a different point in time than the previous product that improved. If this response is satisfactory, we don't need to do anything. Not good enough, we need to change the process. Hopefully now you can see the value of reporting information using a 30,000 foot level format as opposed to a table of numbers. Let's move now to a time series plot conversion. This is another dashboard that was given to me. Now, what questions should we address with this particular metric? So what kind of actions is it going to lead to, or non-actions for that matter? Again, hard to say. I'm going to look at each one of these 6 metrics and determine if I might go in and get a different response than I did from that chart using a 30,000 foot level approach. What conclusion might we draw from this? Hard to say. Is it trending downward? Well, I don't know. If we look at it as a 30,000 foot level report, we notice that we have a special cause condition that might warrant investigation. If we've got a special cause condition, the normal way of reporting this is we're saying our process is not predictable, as noted in the bottom statement. Let's look at report out 2. Well, maybe we're going up. Maybe there's a trend here. We look at 30,000 foot level, say, well, maybe, but we don't have enough information to really confirm that movement and trend. So therefore, we're considering the process is to be stable with the predictive statement noted below. Again, if we don't like the response from common cause variability, we've got to change the process. Let's look at report number 3. Wow, looks like we moved down significantly. But how are we going to perform in the future? We can't tell. Well, our 30,000 foot level report out confirms that we believe that something changed. Maybe this was a process improvement effort, and that describes that change, or that gap describes the implications from that process improvement effort. So right now we have a region of stability, and we can make a prediction statement of what we expect in the future. Again, if we don't like the response, we need to change something within the process. Report 4, what does this tell us? Again, hard to say. 30,000 foot level indications that it's a predictable process with a certain response for a prediction statement. Let's look at report 5. What conclusions can we draw from this? Again, one person may come up with one thought, another person may come up with another. 30,000-foot level reporting, what do we have? We indicated a predictable process. However, if we look at the probability plot, we notice that there's a knee in the curve. Whenever that occurs, we kind of believe that there's more than one distribution. Maybe for this particular process, there's some seasonality issues. For certain months, the lower number than it is higher. But now with this farmer reporting, we can start looking into those kind of issues and see if it's something that we might change or we just have to live with. The final one for this particular dashboard is step 6, report 6. What conclusion? Hard to say again. This particular output indicates we've got a stable process. And again, if we don't like the response, we've got to do something different. So hopefully now you've seen how the 30,000-foot level charting can give you a lot more information than the traditional table of numbers. Go to the next dashboard, which percentages in a table. For this particular metric, we're looking at wastage. 0 is the ideal value. Lower numbers are better. If we notice for this particular report out that somebody gave me, they have year-to-date. This I find to be quite common in reporting a table of numbers. We seem like we always want to throw out what happened last year and start all over again with this year. But magically, from December to January, things don't change from a process point of view anyway. So what conclusions can we draw? Difficult to say, but let's track this not only for this last year, but for multiple years. Now, since it's an attribute response, it's percent wastage, we don't need a probability plot and shouldn't use a probability plot. From this chart, we notice that we had a long period of stability with one special cause. We could investigate that one. But then we had a shift in the process to a lower value, a better value. In talking with our customer, they noted that they had been working on process improvement. So this chart quantifies the magnitude of the process improvement that they had from their project. On-time delivery graphical performance. The next dashboard I'm going to talk about. This is another report out that we've had. The question is, what do you do relative to on-time delivery reporting? Notice this is looking at the response as attribute. It was late or not late. But 1 minute late is not quite the same as 3 days late or a week or a month. So I'll be looking at it as a continuous response over a longer period of time. In this case, we got multiple data points for each of our subgroups or each time period. To assess stability, we're looking at the average value, tracking that over time with an individual's chart, and also the variability within each of these time periods, tracking that over time. If both of those are stable, we say we got a stable process, and we can make a prediction statement. Now for this particular response, we notice that the average value showed some sort of reasonable stability. It had one special cause condition, but then it shifted higher, and then it dropped. Lower numbers are better. Now this would not be highlighted using a table of numbers. Now we have a recent region of stability. There's 5 different periods. If we take and plot all the raw data, we can create a probability plot. Now with the probability plot, we'd like to see a nice straight line. That means a normal distribution or a log normal, whichever the probability plot has a good fit. In this case, it doesn't. What does that mean? Well, it means we probably have more than one distribution. We can still make an estimate, but it's probably not going to be that great, but it's still an estimate. But this particular farmer reporting the probability plot might institute investigation. Perhaps we might find that certain products that we're shipping have a longer lead time and therefore more variability or uncertainty relative to on-time delivery. and that could be causing differences than if there's a product that has a short lead time. Notice how we gain much more understanding with this form of reporting. Now again, if we don't like the response, we need to change it. And insight to the probability plot curvature might give us insight to what we might do differently. The next dashboard I'm going to talk about is product service and performance percentage KPI graphics. This is a report out that one organization is using. Notice how we've got service reliability we're looking at. 100% is ideal. But currently, the goal is no more than 2% non-conformance. Now, rather than looking at the good side of it, I'm going to look at the bad side, the non-conformance. Tracking that over time, we notice that the process appears pretty stable except for a couple special cause conditions, which could occur by chance. So I'm going to consider the process to basically be stable, and I'm going to ignore the out-of-control conditions. Given that, then I can make a prediction statement. I'm predicting that our process has got about a 3.2% non-availability. Our previous objective was 2% or less. So as you can see, we have not made any improvements and we're not achieving our goal. So for this process, we would be encouraged to actually undertake process improvement efforts to drive to the 2% or less value. Proof of the pudding that we made a difference is our process was staged to a lower level, a better level of performance. Tabular effectiveness reporting, the next dashboard. This dashboard is dealing with OEE, or overall equipment effectiveness. It's a manufacturing type metric. However, the concepts apply to transactional processes as well. What action do we take given this particular line of reporting? Difficult to say. So I'm going to look at OEE relative to line 1 and line 2. Line 2 is which I'll start with. What conclusions might we draw from this? Looks like our process is drifting quite a bit. So actions might be investigated to determine what we might do differently to improve the stability of the process. Let's now look at line 1. Line 1 had a lot of instability, but it seemed like it settled out. So what might we do? We could stage our process. Now we've got a recent region of stability. What do we predict? We've got a 70.3% performance estimate. If we don't like that answer, we need to do something different to the process. Or we could just monitor over time and make sure it doesn't change. So this form of reporting can be a means of control within the process. The next dashboard is graphical annual time series reporting. This is another dashboard someone gave me. What conclusions can we make? Well, we notice one thing, that they're big on looking at things annually and how things track annually. Rather than doing that in the 30,000-foot level chart, I just put everything time series. Questions should we address here? Well, it's a stable process. And we're looking at an annual mean value of 5.8 minutes. This particular metric is dealing with the transmission outages in a certain part of the country. We then might look and see if that value is okay. If it is, then we say our process does not need to improve. If it's not, then we need to do something different. Next one is failure rate bar graph. What actions does this type of chart lead to? Difficult to say. One person may interpret it one way, another may interpret it another way. But with 30,000-foot level reporting, we're going to get consistent reporting that does not lead to much interpretation of the graph. For this particular case, we're looking at 82,000, roughly, defects per million units. In the previous chart, we had set an objective of 68,000. 82,000 is obviously higher than 68,000. So if we are consistent with or have the objective of achieving that goal of 68,000, we need to do something to improve the process. Notice how with this chart and a lot of the other charts, we've had goals for a long time that really did not improve anything with the current dashboard system. Now, I've covered a lot of ground here with this 9 case studies. If you go to our website, you can get more discussions about each of those case studies. If you would like to get that link directly, just send me an email and I can send you that link so that you can get this information. My email will be provided at the end of this webinar. What I'd like to now is talk about how to put together these 30,000 foot level forms of reporting. What we built is an add-in to Minitab statistical software. And I'd like to share with you how we can use this particular metric in the report out. How can we create these charts? So I'm going into Minitab, and what I'm going to do is create a random set of data here, normal distribution. I'm going to create 30 data points. I'm going to store it in column 1. So in column 1, we've got 30 random data points. Now I'm going to use our macro or our add-in. So my data is in column 1, so I enter column 1 here. I could title it sample. Then I'm going to create the chart. Now, we'll give you a copy of this add-in. All you have to do is send me an email message requesting this add-in. However, if you're doing a lot of this, what you would really like to do is automation relative to the reporting out of these metrics. And we have software that does that too. So this is what that random data looks like, and now we can make a prediction statement. Since we did not have a specification, we're reporting the median and 80% frequency of occurrence. Now let's consider we had an upper specification of 1. We had a lower specification of -1. And now it's going to recalculate that probability plot, considering that now we have those specifications. We now estimate our nonconformance rate to be about 34%. We can handle attribute data, multiple samples within subgroups, and so on using this add-in. So again, if this appeals to you, send me an email message. I can send you the link. Got another polling question. What type of dashboard do you think should be used in organizations so that the most appropriate decisions are made? Notice how this poll is similar to the first question I asked, but now I'm asking the question, should be used? Your opinion, which particular dashboard do you think is the best one to use? Red, yellow, green scorecards, table of numbers, time series reporting, 30,000 foot level performance reporting, no performance metric tracking, say the heck with it, or you don't know.
Looks like the votes are coming in for us. Those 9 examples you showed us were just, transforming it to the predictive measures was really good. I think we had a couple of questions come in about that we'll try to get to at the end, but the poll Most people have voted now, and I'll close that and share it. But we've got, 82% now saying that we should be using the 30,000-foot level process performance reporting.
Okay, well, great. If I converted 100% of the people, I'd really be surprised, but since it is quite different. But a lot of people seem to understand what I'm talking about. And again, I'm covering a lot of ground in this session here, so hopefully you've been able to hang in there with me. So I'll just progress down here. So I've really got another polling question here. How are strategic improvement projects or Kaizen events chosen in your current or past organization? High-level management selects these from a list of projects or problems that they think are important. Managers assign projects that they think should be undertaken to make a response better, or you just don't know.
We've got votes coming in again on that one. Things are pretty heavy at the top for the top two right now for us. We've got almost half. We've got half voted now. Give a couple more seconds and then go ahead and close the poll. Okay, we'll count all these votes and I'll share the results. So we've only got 16% saying, they want to make the metrics response better, but then you've got majority up there for saying that the high-level management or the managers assign projects not necessarily based on any data.
Okay, well, good. Very good. Appreciate your response to that question. So I'm going to move now to describe how up-to-date 30,000-foot level metric reporting can be reported throughout an organization. What I'm going to be suggesting is the use of an integrated enterprise excellence value chain. The value chain describes basically what an organization does and how it's going to measure what it does. The boxes that are connected by the arrow represent the primary functions for an organization. This hospital example value chain shows voice of the customer, sales and marketing, and so on. And then they have IT, housekeeping, and so on to be support functions. We like to make this clickable, so now anybody throughout the organization can see how things are going and what processes that they have. So let's pretend now that I am clicking on Deliver Clinical Services. Now when you click on it, you notice the first swim lane is basically the metrics. And I'm suggesting you choose metrics relative to quality, cost, and time. Below that, you will have the procedures associated with that. So basically, you have Y and you have X, or we have Y as a function of X. Now, what happens often in organizations, the people in the north wing of the building are working on Scorecard, and the people in the south wing of the building are working on process improvement. And guess what? They don't talk to each other. Well, through the IEE value chain, we're pulling them together. Within the IEE value chain, you can click on the various boxes and have drill downs, PDF documents, spreadsheets, website links, and also further drill downs. So basically, the IEE value chain is a repository for what you actually do and how you measure what you do. Now, relative to measurements, if we pretend that we click on length of stay, we'll get a format that's similar to what we had been showing previously. For this particular process, we're showing stability. Again, if you don't like the response, you need to change what you're doing or the process associated with that. Another one that we might click on is weekly errors. Oh, gee whiz, this one showed an improvement. That's a really good thing. So we may have, using our EPRS software, daily updates for all the metrics. So now, someone clicks on it, they got a recent region of how the metrics are responding. Let's move now to how to focus improvement efforts to the 30,000-foot level metrics that benefit the enterprise as a whole. If we click on one other box that I had in the value chain, it's called Enterprise Process Management. You'll notice that I have a 9-step system that's shown here. The first step is the vision and mission for an organization. The second step is the value chain, which I've been describing here, where satellite level metrics are the financial metrics reported out in the similar fashion I just showed, and 30,000-foot level metrics are operational metrics. The third step is analyze the enterprise. We'll look at theory constraints, what our value chain metrics are doing, look at voice of the customer, look at the economy, look at our competitors, and pull that all together. We're going to create step 4, SMART, specific, measurable, action, relevant, and time-based satellite or financial metric goals. Then we want to create strategies. These are targeted strategies that are aligned to these financial goals. That can then lead to projects and 30,000-foot level metrics that we need to improve in order to improve the financials. Notice there's going to be an owner of each of these metrics. And for these strategic metrics that need to get improved, that owner is going to be compelled to put it high priority to get someone to work on it, to execute a project to improve the metric or the 30,000-foot level reporting. Because guess what? They're going to be reporting out their metric and process improvement efforts to the boss's boss every month. If we notice also that step 9 loops back to step number 3. So it's plan, do, check, act for the enterprise as a whole. Because if you executed the project, then you did a good job in your value chain, you change your procedures, which impacted your 30,000-foot level metric, which impacted the satellite level metric. So again, looking back from step 9 to step 3 is a Deming plan, do, check, act for the enterprise as a whole. Now what we really want to do is figure out what areas we should be working on in these monthly meetings. So that's when you can click on the Enterprise Improvement Plan. Now if you recall, step 1 was the vision and mission. The step 2 is your value chain. Step 3 is the analyze. Step 4 is the goal. And step 5, 6, and 7 are shown as columns here. Now if I had gone through the complete value chain, you would have noticed that a competitor moved in town that negatively impacted our financials. So our goal from a business goal, that's step 4, is to get back where we were at previously for the satellite level metric. Now how are we going to do that? Well, we want to increase the monthly revenue, increase the top line. There's going to be a marketing manager because our market share dropped. That's their objective to improve that. How are they going to do that? They're going to have to execute projects, figure out what they need to do differently to actually draw more people into the hospital. Strategies also included customer perception. There were some issues with housekeeping and patient transportation. So again, there's going to be an owner of those metrics, or 30,000-foot level metric, asking for those projects to get done. So now we have projects that are aligned to the needs of the overall business. Polling question 4. Reworded polling question 3 a little bit to how do you think that projects should be selected? Should you use high-level listing of management? You know, and ideally, obviously, if they want to do something, we're going to do it. But if you were running the show, how do you think that they should be done? Should be managers assign projects, or should we make performance metrics response better, which possibly impacts the benefit of the whole? So that's how we actually select projects, or you don't know.
Okay. Looks like everybody's getting their votes in. I'll close the poll here in a couple of seconds. Almost a general consensus. And I'll launch this to share. So 88% saying that, you know, we should be judging projects based on the metrics to make the response better. Okay, well that's great. That's the answer I like for people to do. But even if I got 100%, I've been surprised. Okay, let's move it on here. As I described initially, I thought there were some issues relative to business management. And I'm going to be walking through each one of those because, as I promised, I thought that the IEEE system addresses those 4 issues. So the first issue, if you recall,
was monthly the executive management gets a 60-plus slide PowerPoint deck or a huge Excel file which compiled basically all the performance measures. What I'm suggesting as an alternative is that the IEE value chain with automatic updates provides up-to-date information where the performance metrics are reported predictably and can be accessed anytime throughout the organization. Executives and other meeting presentations can make reference to specific value chain metrics along with appropriate action plans or the results when appropriate. So anyway, that's my response or my IEE resolution to this particular issue. Let's move now to the second issue. This was dealing with the executive management reviews. So what I'm suggesting that we can have for reviews either monthly or quarterly, we can target focus to strategic metric improvement need as determined through the IEE Enterprise Improvement Plan or the EIP. In these meetings, managers of processes that are to be improved or their performance metrics are to be improved should be given focus. During these reviews of these targeted areas, the 30,000-foot level metric reporting status would be given, and also the status of the projects that are to actually impact those metrics. How do we address item number 3 in my list? This is one talking about a lot of firefighting and a lot of improvement efforts that were not seen to be valuable. So I broke this resolution down into 2 pieces. Relative to firefighting, it's often the result of treating common cause variability as though it's special cause. This issue can be resolved with 30,000-foot level reporting. If a process or response has common cause variability and its performance is unsatisfactory, a process improvement effort needs to be undertaken. A transition in 30,000 individuals chart to enhanced level of performance indicates that effective improvement efforts were made. Now, relative to improvement efforts that we're undertaking, not impacting the big picture, application of the IEE EIP targets improvement efforts so that the enterprise as a whole benefits from these improvement projects. Because as you recall in the EIP, there was alignment between the projects and the overall enterprise financials. Organizations operating in silos was number 4. An IEE value chain presents organizations as a system of interconnected processes with predictive performance measurement that break down these silos. Organizational metric goals can be established through the EIP where enterprise as a whole benefits through target improvement efforts. Let's look now at education opportunities that we have relative to the concepts described in this webinar. If you liked and would like more information on how you could learn about 30,000-foot level reporting, there's several different options. Chapters 12 and 13 of Integrated Enterprise Excellence Volume 3 discusses 30,000-foot level reporting in much detail. We have 30,000-foot level online training. It's about 20 hours where someone could go through it. Notice how we try to make it so that the practitioner understands how to create these charts, but the statements at the bottom makes the person that's just viewing the chart easy to understand. We also include in our Lean Six Sigma Master Black Belt, and Green Belt training 30,000-foot level reporting and the details to create these charts. Integrated Enterprise Excellence Value Chain and Improvement Efforts. I've written in my Volume 2 of the Integrated Enterprise Excellence series, I go into the details of this methodology. Also, we covered this in our Lean Six Sigma Master Black Belt training. So I want to now redress our learning objectives. At the conclusion of the session, attendees should be able to describe conversion of commonplace dashboards and KPIs to predictive statements. So hopefully you've got some good takeaways relative to that. Describe how up-to-date 30,000-foot level performance metrics can be reported throughout an organization. Thirdly, describe how focused improvement efforts to those 30,000-foot level metrics can be addressed and achieved so that the enterprise as a whole benefits. Potential next steps. Smarter Solutions can work with your team to do several different things. Kind of is up to you. We can transition your KPI reporting to 30,000-foot level predictive reports. It's not easy to do this the first time around. We can help you get started. We can help you facilitate the creation of an IEE value chain with determination of the functional metrics that are appropriate and 30,000-foot level reporting. We can create an automated, updated IEE value chain for your organization and show you how to do that. We can facilitate for the use of the IEE value chain and other available information the identification of projects that is going to benefit the enterprise as a whole. Or we can lead a project team to improve a particular process's performance and its 30,000-foot level metric. Smarter Solution typically teaches organizations to fish as opposed to giving them fish. Questions?
Forrest, that was great. And we do have some questions that have been coming in throughout the presentation. So I do want to kind of back up a little bit to a question, just kind of to address some logistics first of all. Email Forrest at this address that you see on the screen if you're interested in receiving the link that he mentioned to more examples. Also, if you're interested in the mini-tab add-in. And if you're interested in the slides, we can send those personally to you if requested. But somebody asked, what if they don't have mini-tab and they want some kind of conversion like this to do the predictive statements?
Well, one of the things is that, unfortunately, Excel does not do a very good job on probability plots. So that's the reason we've aligned up with Minitab to go in and create this, because we're looking at creating charts that's going to give you a lot of information. Now, some of the things that we're talking about here, one could go in and use an Excel add-in to do something like this, but it's not near as neat as the one that I just described here today.
Yeah, and I really like what you've shown, aligning to the business goals versus what I talked about, the big, hairy, audacious goal that my previous job was aligned to. I really think this could be beneficial. So let's see. I've got a question here about cyclical data. Back on slide 26, there was a question about how does the impact conclusions, how does cyclical data impact the conclusions or the recommendations?
Well, sometimes you'll have cyclical data that that we might have within the organization, but and then you need to go in and examine it. For example, we might have a situation where the holiday season is different than the rest of the time, so we might look at that as a separate process. And so that's one of the ways that you can handle that situation. And we might have more than one process. So we have a process basically during the holiday season, and then we have a different process during the other time of the year. So what I'm suggesting is if we understand that, then we can go in and look at something that's differently. And so that can, but a lot of times whenever we start putting it together, in this particular format, it kind of falls out. Or there's other things that you can do, even going in and doing some normality comparison to that. So we can, if you got a particular situation, then you might touch base with me offline, and then we can look at that.
That's a great answer. Another question about incentive pay. So if I'm basing my incentive pay on process outcomes, and they don't want to reward or punish for random variation, how would you suggest they establish goals for rewards?
Boy, you give me a tough question. I was attending a conference and somebody's presenting and they were really attacking the presenters. But no, that's a very good question. I think personally, I think that paper performance has some challenges. You know, a lot of times we'll set goals, and these tend to be somewhat arbitrary, and you can end up gaming them sometimes. And I think that's what actually happened to Enron, and also even the turn of, you know, more recently in the financial crisis, we set goals and financial incentives were tied to those and can lead to very unhealthy behaviors. I personally believe, and this is just me, and I'd really be receptive to anybody that has a better idea, is I think we ought to, paper performance ought to be off of profit margin. I don't know how a way to actually achieve this and make it completely fair. Now that's just my belief, okay? And but that's because I just have not seen one a good paper performance model that doesn't lead to questionable behaviors.
Yeah, and I can attest to that as well, Forrest. So we have an attendee who was interested in learning more about balanced scorecards. So that wasn't necessarily covered as much here as some of the other methods, but what do you have to say about some of those
Well,
methods?
the balanced scorecard, the name sounds real attractive, and I'm all for the name itself. However, if you get into the mechanics of it, it's aligned to strategies. And strategies are often worded like I want to be the best of the best. And everybody's supposed to align to that particular strategy. And then we have a balance, or a 4-quadrant balance as we're going through the organization. What I prefer to do is have a natural balance. So, for example, I don't want to sacrifice defective rates for on-time delivery. So I want to have a natural balance. So that's where I prefer to look at the balance. And I don't particularly like going in and aligning all my metrics to the strategies that I'm trying to undertake, because if we got new leadership, then our strategies could actually change. So I like to look at it from the value chain point of view, and I like to create a natural balance within the overall value chain.
Great. We have over time a little bit, but I'll ask you this one last question for us, and I'll just read it straight off. You know, this is all well and good, but how do you get the opportunity to do this without first changing the organization's culture? Failure to change the culture is the root cause for all the failure modes, and so how do you address that one for us?
Okay, it's a real easy question to answer. Right? Culture is always a challenge, but you know, a lot of times people say we want to change the culture, but what do we want to change it to? Well, I'm suggesting this is, I think as Covey said, keep the end in mind, and that's what I'm giving you as an end in mind. I gave you the big enchilada. But what you can do is you can start with a certain KPI that you might have right now and start looking at how I should report that to give a better behavior, the 30,000-foot level. Then what you would like to do to get and describe this methodology through an influencer or whatever to a decision maker that could undertake this kind of methodology throughout the organization. And so now what we would have that one person, and that you would be talking to on a one-on-one basis, that they say, gee whiz, we really need to do something fundamentally different. And so then we start building this methodology, and little by little it would build its own culture, that we're going to be data-driven on how we're going to be making our decisions. But you'd need to have somebody at the top that's embracing this methodology, but how do you get there? You do some logic and show them, maybe an influencer, how our current KPIs are not leading to the right behaviors. If not unhealthy, it's maybe destructive behaviors. And this is a way of getting around that.
That's great for us. So basically what you're telling us is bring an enchilada to the decision makers and
yeah, and you want to start out small. You want to just start it, but then
yeah.
this is the end in mind. So, and if you've got any questions about how you undertake those challenges, just contact me and we can set up a time where we can have a conversation.
Sounds good. Again, your email address is there on the screen, and we appreciate all of the feedback and questions and interaction for this webinar. We appreciate you attending today. Thank you.